I can't stand here, but I can stand here. So that's pretty unnerving. We're really working on the bleeding edge of this place, right? At the end of the last episode, we finally got our aluminum factory production into full swing. And I gotta say that right now in front of me, I've taken a moment to kind of clean things up, and I gotta say that it looks really, really nice. So let's go ahead and just do a quick walkthrough before we push on, because today I'd like to set the foundations for our nuclear work site, and I think it's going to start to bring everything together and kind of make it a little, at least make a little more sense, right? You can see out here, this is where we made the packaged sulfuric acid. It's currently in a full pause, and I don't really want to sync this out just because eventually anything where we're packaging and unpackaging, I want to have it be a closed loop where we are not actually adding in any additional like empty tanks and empty canisters and things like that. It kind of handles itself. So if we sunk them out, then we'd have to keep feeding it more and more canisters. So all of the production's being packaged up here. We've got 2 full industrial storage bins, and more importantly, it's been cleaned up. So we've got a little power organization right here, and everything's looking mighty dandy. I've actually changed the configuration for our water addition, so you can see that things have been separated and split a little bit better, so that it will more efficiently prioritize the byproduct water coming on back for that 300 cubic meters of water. And right now everything's running at 100%, which is phenomenal because it was kind of hiccuping a little bit, I noticed over time, but now it is running lean, mean, and clean. You can see that unbroken lane of aluminum scrap, and more importantly, above all of the 40 smelters that have now been, you know, put into a building, and all of the electrical wiring has been adjusted. You can see that there's that 1,200 aluminum ingots per minute just flying on out and being sunk out. So overall, really, really, really nice. Definitely way more consistent now. So I'm very happy with the result. And in the distance, the moment we start drawing upon that packaged sulfuric acid, this is going to start moving again, and it just is ready to feed. So really like how this turned out. It is clean, it's productive, it's efficient. Everything is working like clockwork, and we're really going to want that because we do not want anything to disrupt our nuclear flow, right? So we're going to head over to our fancy factory village, and then I've actually adjusted the active work portal here. I've added a new statue. You can see that the hog is ready and charging at the butt of the right at the butt of the pretty good pioneering statue. He doesn't even expect the darn thing. It's just like real life, isn't that the truth? So here's our active work portal, and we are going to appear over in the Dune Desert. All right, here we are. So we have arrived. And where are we exactly? Not too far away. This is the original nuclear building site. I've kind of moved ourselves down to the south a tad because I'd like to figure out kind of what it's going to look like, at least scale wise, to have all of our nuclear power plants in play and just kind of figure out what the layout is going to be like. So I figured we can kind of focus on that today and get one lane working. You'll see what I'm talking about. So if we go ahead and fly a little bit higher, you will see there's a lot on the waterfront right now. It looks strange, like some kind of weird crab or prawn farm, right? In the distance, there are 9 nuclear power plants just for scale. They're not all going to be grouped up like this, but there's 3 nuclear power plants for the processing of uranium. In the distance, there's 4 nuclear power plants for the processing of plutonium. And then after that, there's 2 nuclear power plants for the processing of fixonium. There are a few notable features here when I laid out all these foundations just to kind of get an idea for scale and layout. Way in the distance, if we head all the way down, if we head out to the edge, I originally had the idea that I'd be able to extend even farther than this, but I did not think about it because I've never built to this extreme, that this would happen. So if we go out here, I am dying. So right now, this foundation is the very limit of the edge of this map. So we cannot go beyond this point without suffering catastrophic damage. So right now, yes, we could build stuff out there. So maybe if we really need to, we can extend the drones out more this way. and they would still operate. We just probably need to consistently heal ourselves every time we had to do maintenance. So hopefully that's not going to happen. So in order to kind of map it out and figure out, okay, how far can we go and how much space do we need and how are we going to work all of the components together? Because we've been building silica production, we've been building copper powder production, all kinds of stuff like that. We're going to need to bring it all together, and we're going to bring it together here. On this side, maybe down here, I've been drawing a sketch, so you're gonna kind of have to put on your thinking cap with me for a second. So let's just get a little elevation so it's a little easier to see. So extending out to the right, but not past this point, I was thinking we could have a bunch of drone ports, yeah? And they would all be sending in different ingredients or components that we're going to need, from copper powder to silica to packaged nitric acid and stuff like that. Then it's all going to come out, go into buffers, and then flow down the lane, and then turn into a giant vertical wall of resources, just because it's easier for us to pick off of that vertical wall. And that's going to happen way over on the other side. So way down here, I've placed a long line of glass foundation, and the way that I determine its position is just based off of, if I were to extend a vertical structure like this wall, it is not intersecting with any of the terrain right here. So it's going to be, all of these resources are going to flow down along the water covered in glass, and then they're going to come up lifts and then load onto one giant vertical wall of resources, yeah? So that's going to flow down the lane here along all this glass. And then to the right, towards the end of this structure, we're going to have the nuclear power plants. So we're basically going to peel resources off to the right. We're going to work on the infrastructure right here. And then as we get closer to the back end where there's the edge of the map and the nuclear power plants are going to be out there, we're going to eventually create the uranium fuel rods, right? So those will power these 3 nuclear power plants. When we get over to the nuclear power plants, I'll show you what I'm talking about, but there is a port for where the waste is going to come out, I believe, and it's a solid product. So that solid product is then going to flow down to the next lane. It's going to come down, be recycled, and turned into its next form. So we'll have like fissile, I think it was like something fissile uranium or something, non-fissile, that's what it is. Non-fissile uranium. So as an example, the uranium waste is going to come out the back of the power plant. I actually think these things look a lot like coffee percolators or drip coffee apparati or something like that. Either way, they look so cool. Never had one of these. I'm so excited to see these things in action. Coffee Stain did a really good job of actually animating all of these, so I cannot wait to see them do their thing. On the back side right here, you'll see there's an output port right here, and there's an input port, and then there's an input port for fluids. Now, as I understand it, we're gonna have to input water right here, and we're gonna have to input the fuel rods or whatever fuel we're gonna burn, right? And then on the output, that's where the waste is gonna come out. Originally, I kind of thought that we would be working from this side all the way down in this direction, but I've changed my mind because the output port is on this side. And that means that we can gather the uranium waste and then move it down this way and then send it straight down into being recycled. And then that material is going to help us create the plutonium fuel rods. Those will come down in the gap between the uranium and the plutonium, and then they will feed in to the nuclear power plants on the next set, and then the plutonium waste is going to flow down and then come out this way in the gap, and then it's going to be recycled to create the fixonium rods. Then those fixonium rods, you can see what's happening here, right, are going to come down through the gap, and then they're going to go in, and then there will be no waste at that point, right? Now, how do we get the water, right? Most would probably think it makes sense to have water extractors right here and then just pump the water in. We only need, I think it's like 600 cubic meters of water per overclocked nuclear power plant. We can definitely do that. We've got a lot of water right here, but I've been wanting to do something a little silly. So what I'm talking about is a drone port waterfall. Now, what is that? I was thinking that in this gap back here, there's a reason why I left space. Probably going to need more space now that I think about it, but This is just for scale. The idea is that on this back set of 5 or more of foundations, we're going to have a big tower with pipes coming down from the top and then distributing into the power plants like a big waterfall. On top are going to be a number of drone ports, and then we're going to be feeding packaged water. That's right. Thousands of cubic meters of packaged water and just basically emptying them out like little Dixie cups. Is it efficient? No. Is it going to be cool? I sure hope so. I think the only thing is we won't be able to see the water come down. It's just going to be a bunch of pipes, but it's going to be funny that we're feeding these nuclear power plants so efficiently like that. You know, it's like combining the low tech with the high tech all at the same time. I think it's going to be brilliant. So that whole wall back there is just going to be drones bringing in water to power these coffee machines. Maybe we should even name them after coffee, like processing or something like that. Either way, it's going to be really cool. So we're going to have the Dixie Cup production on the backside feeding into the nuclear power plants. Way in the distance there, we're going to have drones feeding all the resources down, and they're going to come down off the drone ports into buffers and then move flatly across the water. And then they're going to come up lifts and be in a vertical wall where the glass foundation is right here. And then any excess is going to pass on through, go back to being flat, and then get passed into a line of sinks. Awesome sinks. So what I'm thinking is it would be kind of neat in that everything's flowing in the same direction as all the water and then being dumped off into a waterfall. It's like all our resources are flowing down in the direction of the waterfall, and then they're going to get sunk out in awesome sinks. So that's the idea. All the infrastructure is going to happen in this gap between the cliff and the nuclear power plants, with the waterfall in the background and the recycling happening when the waste comes down and then feeds the resultant fuel rod forward. So that's my idea. Now, what can we do about it? Because I have to admit, it's been a little intimidating. I found it much more manageable to work on the little external sites, but you know, I don't really foresee how it's all going to come together. And I find that in Satisfactory, at least for me, I find it the easiest to understand how something's going to come together by actually putting it in the game. And there's no way to do that until we lay down the groundwork. So what I would like to do is have one delivery, just one, leading into syncing. Because if we can do that, then eventually we'll start to hook up. It's just a matter of assigning drone ports to drone port destinations. And then we're actually going to start to see that wall climb and climb and climb. And once there's a physical manifestation of that, then I would believe that it's going to be a lot easier to understand how this is all going to come together. Do I know what it's going to look like in the end? No, I don't. Sometimes you just got to have faith, try it out, and adjust from there. So that's the plan. That's the plan. So I would say what we should do is just start with a basic, maybe like 2 ports. And then we're going to try to build a simple base of the wall down here on the glass. And then we're going to have some sinking going on down there. And that is going to be the foundation of this entire work site right here. And as we start adding in satellite facilities around to feed more raw resources, then we're going to be able to fill in all the infrastructure and we'll have everything together. Never done anything like this, so let's see what we can do. So obviously this is the very edge, right? If I hop off this way, that doesn't help us. So we've got to basically use this as the very edge. I'm going to choose zoom mode. I'm just going to shoot it down a little bit further. Honestly, we're probably going to be going down, 30, 40 foundations or more, right? So that's 10. I do like the fact that I've got the limitation of 10, so I can sort of count just by zooping, right? That, as an example, said times 9, so I know I didn't go the full 10, but, I get the idea. It's about 10, so just to compensate, I'll even do that. Let's go ahead and just say that we'll have 3x2 for the drone port, and I do need some power down here, so we're just going to do the normal thing. We just route power all willy-nilly and then eventually clean it up once we understand how it's actually going to look in final, or at least close to. It's kind of like a release candidate process. So I know when I worked with video games, you had your RCs, and this is basically our, we're going along with prototyping until we get an RC, and then eventually we clean it up and we put the big, decimal on it, right? One thing that I noticed is that I was going to continue to package more nitric acid, some nitrogen gas, stuff like that. Heck, even more water. But I realized that if I wouldn't be able to do anything with it because I don't have anywhere to send it. And without anywhere to send it, I can't test returning the canisters back to the source, right? So we're going to start right out here as an example. I intend to have this elevated a little bit. So maybe we will just for the purposes of, you know, testing the fact that it's going to come out, come down, and then go into a bin. I'm just going to put some random walls. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be this high, but we can say that we're going to go up, let's say like 4, right? We'll come up 4 meters of wall, right? 4 meter walls, so like 16 meters, sorry. So I'm going to go ahead and just mark up. We'll go for the 1 meter, and then we'll change it over to the grip foundation because, you know, that's a nice change, and I really like how the grip foundation looks. So we'll go grip metal foundation at 1 meter. Honestly, I think it should probably be taller, but it is what it is. And we're just going to get that nice 3x2, and then we'll have the drone port. I guess we'll have it face out towards, oh, like, what will we call this? The death direction? The direction of death? It's like the Hades drone port, right? Somehow some 3-headed dog's going to come out and stop us, and it's going to Cerberus us up. So there we go. So we got a drone port facing out that way. We're going to have drones flying in and landing. I think it'll be really cool. See, it can be there. I can't. I can't stand here, but I can stand here. So that's pretty unnerving. We're really working on the bleeding edge of this place, right? So I probably want to have, let's say, 2 of these things. So what if we basically extend off of what we normally build, which is a 1 meter foundation separation, or heck, maybe since we're going so large, we'll even have 2. So we can do something like this. So we'll have 1 hang out this way. We'll have 1 hang out this way, like that. Because oftentimes in order to get that throughput, we're going to need 2 receiving points instead of just a singleton. And then we'll go ahead and have a base below, which maybe can house the industrial storage containers, right? And if we don't think about any sort of fuel at the moment, like we'll have, let's say, if this were the end of the line, we might have another drone port here, and it just passes the fuel all the way down. I'm thinking we're going to have an input right here and here, but when it comes to fuel, we're going to have the lift, and it's going to receive from down the lane, and every single drone port's just going to constantly get fed by the 2 fuel drones in line, right? So let's go ahead and just take a generic setup right here. Maybe we'll build another one so that we can at least test what 2 are going to flow down like, but I guess we can do that after we set up 1, right? So there are the ports feeding down, and we want to make sure that we've got these flowing out this way. So if we get an industrial storage container, and is this aligned with anything in particular? Looks like if we just sort of send these down and face them this way, we'll get a better idea. There we go. So along the base. So what can we do? I'd like to have a industrial storage container for each. So we did something like maybe like that. And then we get another industrial storage container, but maybe we do it like this, you know, just so that they are taking up a similar footprint. Eventually, I want the resources to flow down this way. I'm just trying to figure out a sort of a symmetrical way of doing so, because I think it's going to be important to my aesthetic sense. Mostly that. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. It's all having to do with my aesthetic sense, and that is completely beyond subjective. So let's go ahead and turn this direction. We're just going to test different layouts out because it's going to be the foundation for everything that we do, right? Now, one thing I should probably keep in mind is that if I have this middle part of the industrial storage container, the vertical point, kind of lining up with the center foundation, then I'll have some reference to get this right every single time. So I definitely think that's going to be important. We'll just put that on hold, make sure that's lined up. Yeah, it looks pretty lined up. And then at that point, it's going to flow right in like that, let's say. We'll have it be in line, centered at least, and then like this, and then that's going to flow in like that, let's say. That's not bad. Although if I had to do it and I had to choose, you guessed it, I'm going to have it come down, not all the way down, but instead be elevated some. That's right, like that. I would prefer that than being on the ground. I think it's going to be much easier, much nicer to look at and much easier to work with if we are elevated. And that lines up right here. So now from there, what do we do with it? Do we merge it together? Do we do anything in particular? I would imagine that normally we'd merge it together. That probably makes the most sense because they're probably going to take in like 600-ish per minute each. And we want them to come together and flow out in one lane. So the destination should probably be like just the middle foundation is my guess. So we'll kind of go like that. They could pass between the containers and come out one side. That is something that we could do. I suppose since we are moving drone ports in this direction, having a merge in this direction probably wouldn't be bad. So we can say 1, 2, 3, we'll get the conveyor merger and we will bring it out in that direction. We'll have it in the middle and centered right here. We can then have the output in straight mode and then attach, and then we can do this and come it around like that. So they'll exit, merge, and come out. I don't know if that's necessarily a beautiful thing. I mean, if we had the containers facing, you know, towards that direction, it would probably be an easier merge, but then this is going to stick out quite far and we're not going to be able to compress it as much, I think. So maybe we'll do something like this for now, and then at least for the test. So what we can do is extend it out one more, because I'd like to see what this looks like if we've got, you know, two right next to each other. And nice thing is, all we got to do is flip it, control click, and it's super easy once you have one placed down. And then we'll do the same. So we're going to have the input right here. We'll have the input right there. And all we got to do is copy it. Heck, we could even blueprint it if it gets complicated or anything, but I have a feeling it's going to be relatively simple-ish, right? So here we go. We'll just extend this out 3, and then we'll have our containers. It's going to be facing to the right. Bring this down, and it should line up. Yep, that's awesome already. I'm liking this, and we are going to have this one right here. And bring the next one down and it should line up. Excellent. Look at that. And then it's just a matter of the merger. And we want it smack dab in the middle and heading down in this direction. We bring that through on straight mode. We bring this through here. It zips on out in this direction and then ends up right there. Perfect. Look at that. So now we've got two relatively identical setups. Oh my gosh, I'm falling. Okay, let's extend the power just a tadsies, right? There we go. Excellent. And we can even bring that power up, because if we bring the power up, then these are going to receive power, and then they can actually become real ports to route stuff through, which is going to be very important when we're testing this, right? So we'll just kind of power these up on a very basic level. Excellent. They do not have any sort of fuel or anything like that. So these are all ready to go. I guess the question is, how do we get it down the lane? We're probably just going to run the foundation straight through. So every once in a while, we're going to have one come out that way. I have half a mind to... I did want to see this stuff running underneath a whole lane of glass. And what I'm talking about is, if you go to architecture and you go to glass frame foundations, you've got this 1 meter glass frame like this. And I think it would be so cool to be able to walk over the resources and kind of judge its health just like this, right? So if I think about that, then maybe this merge would make sense if it went underneath this foundation right here. So instead of having it zigzag back and come out the middle, it might come out straight instead. So if you did this, maybe instead of a 2 meter here, we are going to use a 1 meter like this. So it's the same thickness right here. We can then have a floor hole, and it's going to receive that 1200 per minute. And then underneath, it's going to take that and it's going to fly out this way. And then we can actually use the ceiling mounts. Oh boy. we can use the ceiling mounts to run the belt underneath, and then we can have the resources just fly on by like that, and you could walk around and, you know, maybe get a little bit higher, maybe have a walkway, something like that, and then we'll be able to at least see it all fly. I think that'd be really cool. So I think I'm going to do that. And this is just at the minimum. I'm probably going to change all of these. Well, I guess I should probably just do it now, right? So we're going to take all the 2 meters and we're going to change them over to 1 meter. So I'm actually just going to select, hit G for the filter, and we're going to highlight everything that is a 2 meter. Those do not highlight because we already changed them. There we go. And then we'll be able to duplicate the 1 meter and just run the 1 meter across. And that's going to allow us to run the resources underneath, right above the water, and make sure that we can then just easily and seamlessly run this right underneath the glass foundation so we can see it fly by, which I think is going to be so awesome. I did something like that when I was working with a copper alloy ingot, and we were taking in all of the iron ore, and we were taking in all of the copper ore. And the cool thing about it is that we had something very similar, and it was all of the resources on a conveyor belt basically suspended underneath a glass foundation, glass frame foundation. So we're going to do something very similar here, and we'll just shoot them out this way at 1200 per minute. I don't think at any point that we will need more than 1200 per minute. So that's too long, so we're going to bring it back and click right there. And there we go. That's the test. So they're going to fly out this way and then eventually go vertical. So let's go ahead and run these glass frame foundations all the way to the shore. I probably want to run power as well so that I'm not constantly falling out of the sky. Oh, I realized I didn't... I realized that maybe I might have left a tiny hole somewhere. There we go. Is that better? Oh, almost missed a small hole here. Okay, great. So you got all these lanes. We're just going to extend these lanes, but I need to extend the power. So I'm just going to go ahead and get a power line, and we're going to just haphazardly bring this with us so that we've got that bird eye view that I've come to rely upon. It's going to be traveling a long distance, but if it's consistent, it doesn't really matter because, you know, you're almost like dealing in the past, if that makes sense, because something that I sent down there maybe like 20 minutes ago, I'm over exaggerating, but those resources will travel along and eventually get to where they need to go. But you're really working on or processing the materials from that 20 minutes ago instead of, oh, well, I'm just getting a delivery right now. It's going to be 20 minutes until I work on the resources, except in this case, you know, it's not that long. At least I hope it's not. That would be embarrassing. I think it's about here where it starts to turn into a wall. I am not entirely sure, so we've just got to double check that it lines up. I'm pretty sure it does, but I could be wrong. And there we go. It all lines up, but I kind of doubled up on some things, so I'll just get rid of these here and fill in the gap from the excess. Okay, perfect. So if you look at it now, essentially you've got drones way out there, 2 receiving ports per material. They're going to fly down on the flat and then come up lifts and then stack up on stackable conveyor poles, right? So that's the idea. Now, I'm not too sure how far off we're going to go, so I think I'm just going to pretend like this is the closest drone port so that we have more room to work with, because it would suck if I had to redo all the drone ports, but, you know, it is what it is, but still. I'll try to avoid it if at all possible, right? And we're just going to get out our very first of these stackable conveyor poles. Since this, in theory, is the very beginning of it all, I'm going to go ahead and just hit zoop and stack that the heck up. Probably going to need even more than this, but, you know, I guess to start with, we can just do sets of 10. And actually, kind of a nice thing is, we can just see how far can we move the conveyor belt. So that's 1 foundation, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7. So 7 total before it complains about being way too long. So I'm going to go ahead and place this right on the intersection again. Bring that up the full extent, and then we can just count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We'll place this way up there. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And I think this is, honestly, counting isn't necessary, but I think it's very helpful when you do not have power all the time and you can't fly and get a bird's eye view, because usually you're looking at your feet, you know. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we'll put it right up there. And we'll just keep doing this all the way down the lane. 5, 6, and 7. And it's going to be right here. So now all we got to do is chain some conveyor belts in between. I guess we'll just start with a 2 because we've got 2 resources to feed on here. And eventually you can understand that it might get taller than just 10. But I don't know off the top of my head, but you know, we'll see how it goes and what we need and what we're going to do with it. So let's get on up. And now how are we going to do this? Well, I would assume that we would get our conveyor lift floor hole. We would extend with an output and it's going to come to the bottom right here, right? And then this is going to go up to this stackable conveyor lift. And then we're going to come across like this. That's the idea. Then this one's going to do the same thing. And we'll have one right here. And we'll bring that one up. And we'll count up each level on the stackable conveyor pole is 2 clicks. So that's 1, 2, then 1, 2. So that's 4 in total. And that should line up perfectly. Just like that. There we go. So it's going to do that. And this is going to continue all the way down. I can already see this getting very long. Like very, very long. I guess we'll go with this first, but I can see me adjusting this in the future. As in right now there's all this space between the resources coming down here. This is going to extend out quite long. Now that's okay. I'm not saying that's bad, but it might make sense to actually have all the drone ports extending out this way. The resources flow and compress together and then come down in one road, and we can have these stack, a bunch of lifts coming up in parallel, as opposed to having this big gap in between and having really long extensions. But you know what? It is what it is right now. We're just working with 2, and it's not difficult to adjust. So this is just the test, right? So let's go ahead and I'm going to extend this down all the way to the last stackable conveyor pole. And I do like the idea of seeing all these things flow. And the reason why I chose a vertical wall, because originally I wanted it to be underneath glass so I could just walk on top of all of the components. And it didn't seem to work out in my mind because I couldn't figure out how am I going to pull components off of these buses, right? All of the splitters kind of move left and right. They move horizontally. So it's easiest to do it if you have a vertical arrangement. Whereas if I were to do this, let's say in a horizontal arrangement, you could do it. You could peel resources off, but I would imagine you'd need gaps for you to peel it off horizontally first. And what I'm talking about is if I were to get this conveyor belt right here, and I want to peel a resource off of it, and let's say they're laid right next to each other, I would need to put a splitter on it like this, and then, you know, lift it up to a certain height or whatever and send it somewhere. It's a lot easier to do that when you're on a vertical bus, because you can do this and just slam that out, right? And you could still have the resources flow right on by. Whereas if I have a bus right next to it like this, when I do this, you have all this clipping, right? It's going to go through the one next door. Whereas with a vertical bus, you don't get that. So that's the main reason why I decided for this. Like when we're actually feeding these resources towards their eventual destinations, let's say, it's going to be a lot easier to peel off from a vertical bus than a horizontal one. So that's kind of the general gist of it. I guess I would normally bring this all the way down and then have the sinks there, but because this is just sort of a prototype, I'm actually going to have the sink out here. So we're going to have 2 sinks and we'll be able to figure out how this all flows. So let's say this is the end of the line right here. So what we can do is get, I guess, a floor hole right here, and we're going to receive, and then we'll get a floor hole right behind it, and then we will receive like that, and it's going to do that. See, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. We could have a structure very similar like this, feeding this vertical bus on the opposite side instead of having these big gaps between them all. But we'll get there and we'll make that decision in the future. So that's the beginning of it all right there. And then we can have these peel off and feed down the lane. So what we're going to want is something that is 3 wide. And the reason why is because essentially, obviously this is going to extend out farther, but essentially you would have all of your awesome sinks. Actually, you know what would work better? If I did this. I was going to put the awesome sink on this side, but now I'm going to put it on this side because these lifts are going to continue to extend out this way to receive the goods off the vertical bus to turn it into a horizontal one. And if I have awesome sinks here, I'm going to have to keep shifting it back and back and back. Whereas if I place them here, I only have to place it once, right? Even though this is just a temporary location, I'm trying to think ahead. So if we go ahead and just place this down, let's say here, and then we put one next door, like we'll hold, bump it over 1, like that. And then we take, this one is in line here, and this one's in line, let's say there. Then you see what's happening, right? So it just comes on out like so, and then they run underneath. So we just gotta suck under for a second, receive, and we're gonna go ahead and receive here as well. And then we'll just send it down the lane. Oops. Like that. Perfect. So you can kind of see how that works, right? So they're on the vertical bus. They peel off, peel off, peel off. This is after it's gone all the way down to the waterfall. And then they come out here, and then they eventually will feed into awesome sinks. So what we're going to do is just get some temporary power out here again. So I'm just going to go ahead and get a power pole and interject on the power line. And if I take a look at it, just make sure it's powered. Yeah, we've got 175,000 megawatt or 175 gigawatt moving through here about. And then we'll just hook these two up. And we're just going to mark them as syncing. So they're all synced up and ready to go. And that's just for visual recognition. And these things should be powered. Yep, they have coupons. I'll even redeem those. And then now we can just send some goods, right? And then we'll see how this goes. So let's head on down. What we can do is actually send the aluminum ingots through. And I think another good one would be, let's say, like the silica. We currently have a lot of silica coming out, like 1,800 per minute. And the neat thing is we currently have sinking operations back at each of the individual satellite factories. So essentially those sinking operations should go completely inert. Like they're not going to do anything. They're just like a backup to the backup, so to speak. So let's mark up these for silica as an example. So I'm going to say, I think the silica I had looking like this color. And then the other one I wanted to do were the aluminum ingots. So we'll say carbon steel like that. I'm going to go all ports. We'll say nuclear aluminum. Oh, I called it nuclear aluminum ingot. Okay, fine. We'll say we want one coming to this port, and we want one coming to this port. There we go. So now we've got 2 drones coming on through, and then I'm going to do the same thing here, except this is for silica. So now, mind you, the silica is going to get bottlenecked because the silica is actually coming out at 1,800 per minute. See, 900 per minute per lane. So that's a bit of a bottleneck, but you know what? I guess we'll see if it can even keep up, right? It's very possible that we're going to need more drones, maybe 4 drones per send, and then they're going to stack 2 drones per port, if that makes any sense. But, you know, we'll get there when we get there. This just testing the flow, right? So there it is. So now those are all already coupled up. And then we're going to see when the drones start to land and appear. And hopefully these things are going to start to flow. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't actually... Okay, so hang on. Little bit of an issue here. Didn't actually run these conveyor belts. So, haha. Just kidding. We better do this. But at least we've got time, right? They've got to fly. It's the first time flying out here. That's going to be important. I can already hear rockets. No bueno. No bueno. So we're just going to wait until it goes red, bring it back, and then stop at the intersection. We'll have to do this a little more consistently in the future. I guess we're a little farther behind on that one. I didn't follow any protocol. Oh, it's coming. She's coming. We're racing. We're racing. I don't think I'm going to be able to keep up, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try. I mean, at least we've got buffers. That's the big thing. We want to fill up those buffers, you know? So this is a good way to do it because it's not fully flowing down, right? I don't think I even put the bottoms. Yep, didn't put the bottoms on. It's always a problem when you didn't put your bottoms on. You forget about your pants, right? Ain't nobody want to forget about their pants. There we go. So that is now... Oh my God, she's going. Look at that. Holy crap. All right, well, they came prepared. They came prepared. Wow. Okay, let's get the other one. Wow, look at her fly. Holy moly. Man, they were stacked up and ready to go. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. We've got more belts to send down lane. So this one, I should be there now. Perfect, perfect. So we're just going to come up almost there. And then we're going to receive the silica. Look at that. It's already stacked up. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. This is what it looks like. Isn't that awesome? Oh my God, look at that. Obviously, we'll color up each lane so that, well, A, it's colorful. Holy crap, wow. God, that's beautiful. Man, I can only imagine when we've got a whole wall of this stuff. Wow. And then I'm assuming that's flowing on out. Yes. Yes. Look at that. Oh my God. Can you imagine? So picture this, a wall that goes up like this, but it's all just flying by like that. And every time we need something, we just kind of do this and then peel that off, right? I mean, the easier one is going to, oh, see, we stopped on aluminum. We lost our aluminum somewhere. This is the easier one. Basically, we would just do that, right? And then it's going to flow out like that. And then we're able to peel stuff off of the lane. Now, the silica has a higher throughput for sure. Let's go ahead and take a look at the aluminum. And the nice thing is each of the drone ports has some kind of, you know, calculated delivery rate on it. So we get an idea if we need to add more drones or less drones. I mean, obviously, we don't need to do this right now. The triumph is just the fact that, you know, we're getting the sort of layout, the look and the feel of it so that we can understand the problems a little bit better, right? Obviously, the aluminum is flying from farther away, so we're going to have more brakes. I would just want to make sure that they're flowing from 2 lanes and not just the one. So the silica is just cruising. Oh my God, look at that. So you actually get to see it. That's so cool. Silica, silica. Are drones coming to both of these? I can't actually tell. This guy's dumping out. Yeah, he's dumping out ingots. This one's dumping out. Yep, they're both dumping out ingots. So it works. They're coming out a rate of 220. So 219. It's possible we're going to need 6. Because if you picture that each drone is like 200 items per minute for this, we're probably going to need to send 3 drones per receiving port. If we look at this one here, they're at 509 items per minute, so not quite up to speed at 600 per item, 600 per lane, but it's a lot closer, so it's not a consistent 1200. But I think, I mean, I guess, holy crap, wow. I guess the stack size is so much larger that it's able to keep up that rate. That's probably what it is. They're at 200 each. Well, I guess, no, that's about the same. Yeah, well, no, it's twice as large. Either way. So there you go. They're coming out. We'll be able to figure out how many drones we actually need at each site based off of the distance they got to fly, etc., etc. But this is cool. This is cool. Logistically speaking, I'm all about this. Now, I do wish... I mean, right now, I'm just brainstorming, but I do wish we could actually, when we extend all the drone ports out this way, and drones are just flying in over and over and over and dumping these things off, that we could bring them together so that these are a little bit tighter together. Although I guess I don't... This isn't horrible. This isn't horrible. I mean, we would just have to make sure that we've got conveyor poles, let's say like at the edges here all the time, just so that we can continue to receive from the one past it. You know what I mean? We'll figure something out. We'll figure something out. Doesn't have to be decided right now, but that's the general idea, right? So very, very nice. I know it's a simple thing, but layout's so important. It's very, very important. So what does this mean? What does this mean for us? Now, it's enough to have lanes coming down this way, but it is not enough to just go in one direction, because I'm going to need to send empty canisters back, right? Because once we dump something out, those empty canisters are going to have to flow back to their same drone port and then actually be sent back into the cycle for, let's say, the packaged sulfuric acid. So this is a very important exercise. Can I just get the power extended so once again I can actually fly? There we go. So now we can fly a little bit. That's going to be nice. So what I'm thinking is we reserve a lane or two just so that we can send things back. I mean, I suppose any sort of packaged good, are we going to intake it from somewhere else, or is it going to be on the same wall? If it's going to be on the same wall, then we're going to want to make sure that whatever it is takes up 2 slots. So what I'm talking about is something like this. Like, let's say we had any packaged goods coming in here for whatever reason. It's just for spitballing purposes, right? So if we go transport and we go drone port, and we were to do something along the lines of this, let's say, and then we get an output and an input, then we would do something along the lines of this would be the output, this would be the input, and let's say you've got your, well, I think you get the idea. You'd have this feed onto the bus, and then you would have one lane either above or below it, which would be empty except for empty canisters. It will just return empty canisters. We can even have a smart splitter that peels off and says empty canisters, we need you to leave this way. And then when it gets empty tanks, we need you to leave this way. That way we can minimize the number of lanes and how tall this is. Otherwise we can have separate lanes. It's not a big deal. And it would just feed back into here, if that makes sense. So, all right, that's not bad. Is it wildly impressive? No, but I like it. I like the setup. And we would just have a lane of awesome sinks, except they'd be at the waterfall. Like, all the stuff is just flowing right off the end there. Obviously, we've got to fix the flow issues, but nice. Very, very cool. The nice thing about this is that as we keep adding satellite facilities, we're going to continue to populate this, and this wall is going to continue to grow, and it's going to be a neat indicator that, hey, we're bringing more and more and more here, and then we can start to put it together, because I think that's kind of the mental block for me right now, is that I've got all this silica, I've got concrete, I know it's for encased industrial beams as an example, I know silica is used to make, you know, computers or circuit boards, who knows, something like that, and I'm just not putting it together, and so I don't understand how it flows. And ideally, if I could, I'd like to have it from bottom to top. I would have the bottom lanes flow to uranium processing, and then, you know, the top lanes, you know, some will still continue to fly down the lane and get peeled off for other productions, but ideally it would peel bottom to top all as we travel down the road. So that's the idea. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with it. I think this is really, really cool. Bunnies, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I know that one wasn't as, I guess, satisfactory animation packed, but I think as a layout standpoint, it's a really, really critical layer or phase in our nuclear power plant setup. So overall, I'm pretty pleased with how that went, and I'm very excited about the fact that now as we start to hook in all of the other satellite factories, this wall is going to continue to grow, and we can actually start to build out different areas where we're going to feed these nuclear power plants. So anyway, if you enjoyed the episode, please feel free to like, share, or comment down below. It helps us a great deal. I had a total blast. I hope you did as well. And I can't wait to get into the next one with you. Have a wonderful, wonderful night.